Pulse Talk, bringing insights into health and wellness with your hosts, Christine and Alex.
Okay, so these days we're all about convenience, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who doesn't love ordering something online and having it delivered right to your doorstep?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to something like medication.
Sure. But, the problem with this is that with the huge amount of online pharmacies and all that, it sort of created opportunities for counterfeit medications to kind of slip into the market.
And the consequences go way beyond just not getting what you thought you were paying for.
Right.
All right, so we've got a lot of research and articles on this counterfeit medication situation.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, the more I read about this, the more concerned I get. So our mission today is to just dive into the risks and figure out how to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's interesting that Alpro Pharmacy keeps coming up as a safe source for medication. So let's talk about that too.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating that many people just don't even realize how widespread this is. Counterfeit medications aren't just limited to like some shady website. It can actually even infiltrate legitimate supply chains, which makes it even harder to tell what's real and what's fake.
That's what's so scary. You could be taking something that you think is helping you, but it's doing nothing, or even worse.
Exactly.
It could be harming you.
And the consequences are serious. I mean, some of these counterfeit meds don't even contain any of the actual active ingredients.
So you're getting no benefit at all.
None. And some others have the wrong ingredients completely, or they're just, the wrong dosages, which leads to side effects, or could even make your condition worse.
Oh, wow. So it's like a dangerous guessing game.
Right.
And I've read some pretty terrifying things about the stuff they find in these fake medications.
Oh, yeah.
Like heavy metals and pesticides, even rat poison.
Yeah. And these substances can really do some damage to your body. I mean, we're talking organ damage, neurological problems, all kinds of complications.
So how are we supposed to protect ourselves? I mean, if they look so similar, how do we even know what's real?
Well, you got to be skeptical.
Yeah.
And really pay attention. Visual inspection can sometimes help, but it's not always a sure thing. Counterfeiters are getting better and better at making their fakes look real, so the most reliable way is actually through chemical testing.
But most people can't do that at home. So what are we supposed to do?
Well, first of all, you got to choose your sources carefully. Always buy from a licensed pharmacy or drugstore, both online and offline. They have to follow strict regulations, so it's much less likely you'll encounter counterfeit medications.
Okay. And you mentioned Alpro Pharmacy earlier. What makes them stand out?
Well, they're so confident about the authenticity of their medications that they actually offer a 1 million ringgit insurance guarantee.
Wow, that's a pretty strong statement.
It is, and it shows how committed they are to providing safe and genuine medication. I mean, they really understand the risk of counterfeit drugs, and they're doing everything they can to minimize it.
So what are some practical things our listener can do to make sure they're getting the real deal, especially when buying online?
Well, when you're shopping online, look for websites that are certified by recognized bodies. That just adds a layer of reassurance. But even then, it's best to stay vigilant. Like if you see any differences in the packaging or the labeling or the medication itself, just be cautious and maybe consult with a pharmacist.
Yeah, and that's where Alpro's commitment to medication safety is really impressive. They have this thing called the 6R concept. It's basically a checklist to make sure everything's correct, like the right medication, the right route, the right dose, the right time, the right patient, and of course the right source.
That's right. And that last one, that right source, that's really what we're talking about here.
So we know that buying from a licensed pharmacy like Alpro online or offline really reduces your risk of getting counterfeit meds. But what if someone is already taking something and they're starting to get suspicious? What are some red flags they should be looking out for?
It's all about the details, kind of like when you're looking at a really valuable painting, you're trying to spot those little things that tell you it's the real deal and not a fake.
Okay, so those tiny things that you might not notice right away, but could be a big giveaway. What are some examples?
We'll start with the packaging. Counterfeiters often try to save money there, so look for bad printing or blurry pictures or even spelling errors on the labels. That's usually a pretty clear sign something's off.
Wow, those little details can really make a difference, huh? And I guess the medication itself could have some red flags too, right?
Absolutely. Take a close look at the pills. Do they have the same color and shape and markings as the ones you usually get? Are they breaking apart easily? Do they smell weird or taste different? Anything that seems off compared to what you're used to could be a warning sign.
So it's about being familiar with your medication and trusting your gut if something feels wrong. But what if you've already taken a few pills before you start to think maybe they're fake? What should you do then?
Stop taking the medication right away. Better safe than sorry, right? Then get in touch with your doctor or pharmacist as soon as possible. They can help you figure out what's going on and what to do next.
Okay, good advice. Now, I was reading an article that mentioned the Canadian Health Department recommending people consistently get their medication from the same pharmacy. Why is that so important?
That's a good point. When you always go to the same pharmacy, the pharmacist gets to know your medication history really well. They can keep an eye out for potential drug interactions, give you personalized advice, and even notice if something seems strange with your prescriptions.
So it's all about building a relationship with your pharmacist,
Yeah.
making them a partner in your healthcare.
Exactly. And that's something that Alpro Pharmacy really emphasizes. They really encourage their patients to ask questions, share any concerns they have, and be involved in managing their own medications.
It's like having a medication expert on your side, someone who's looking out for you.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of Alpro, let's talk a bit more about their approach to medication safety. We've talked about their 1 million ringgit guarantee and the 6R concept, but what else makes them different?
Well, one thing that really impressed me was their focus on sourcing. They're really careful about where they get their medications from.
Oh, absolutely. They have really strong relationships with trusted suppliers and manufacturers, and they've got strict quality control procedures to make sure that every single medication they sell meets the highest standards for authenticity and safety.
So they're not just taking anyone's word for it. They're actually doing their own checks to verify everything.
Exactly. And they go beyond just checking labels and packaging. They actually have systems in place to track and trace medications through the whole supply chain so they can be sure about where everything comes from and how it's been handled.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It's like they're creating a chain of custody for medication, making sure it's been handled correctly and safely every step of the way.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And that level of transparency and accountability is what builds trust with their customers.
But let's be real for a second. Even with all these precautions in place, there's always a tiny chance that something could go wrong. I mean, no system is perfect. So what happens if a customer thinks they might have received a counterfeit medication from Alpro? How does that 1 million ringgit guarantee actually work?
That's a great question. Alpro has a very clear process for dealing with situations like that. If a customer is worried about the authenticity of their medication, they can just contact Alpro directly. They have a whole team dedicated to investigating every single claim thoroughly.
So they're not just ignoring these concerns, they're really taking them seriously.
Absolutely. And that's where the 1 million ringgit insurance guarantee comes in. If they find out that a counterfeit medication was actually dispensed, Alpro will replace it and also compensate the customer for any harm or losses they experienced from taking that fake medication up to 1 million ringgit.
That's a huge sign of confidence in their processes.
Definitely. It really reassures customers that they're in good hands when they choose Alpro Pharmacy.
So for our listeners who are thinking about why they should choose Alpro over any other pharmacy, it really comes down to trust, doesn't it?
You got it. With counterfeit meds being such a growing problem, Alpro offers a level of security that's hard to find anywhere else. They've put in place robust systems, strict checks, and even financial guarantees to make sure their customers get only genuine and safe medications.
It sounds like they're really going above and beyond to tackle this serious issue.
They are, and that dedication to medication safety is something we should all appreciate.
You know, we've been talking a lot about Alpro, but it's important to remember that they're not the only ones fighting against counterfeit meds. There are organizations and initiatives all around the world working hard to stop this problem.
You're right. The World Health Organization, for example, has a whole program dedicated to counterfeit medications. They work with governments, law enforcement agencies, and healthcare professionals to raise awareness, improve monitoring, and strengthen regulation.
And what about here in Malaysia? Are there any specific efforts happening at a local level?
For sure. The Ministry of Health Malaysia is actively involved in tackling this problem. They've implemented stricter rules for online pharmacies, increased border control measures to stop counterfeit meds from being imported, and they've even launched public awareness campaigns to educate people about the risks.
It's good to know that there's a multifaceted approach happening both globally and locally to combat this problem. But what can our listeners do to help? Is there anything they can do beyond just being careful about their own medication choices?
Definitely. One of the most important things consumers can do is report any suspected counterfeit medications they come across.
So if they see those red flags we talked about, they should report it to the authorities.
Exactly. The Ministry of Health Malaysia has a hotline and an online platform for reporting suspected counterfeit medications. This information helps them see patterns, identify problem areas, and take quick action against these counterfeiters.
That's really helpful. Reporting these cases can actually make a big difference in stopping counterfeit medications.
It does. It's like adding another piece to the puzzle. It helps the authorities understand the problem better and develop better strategies to fight it.
So we've talked about the risks, the warning signs, and the efforts being made to address this problem. But before we wrap up, I want to talk about the emotional side of this issue for a minute. It's one thing to understand the physical dangers of counterfeit meds, but what about the psychological impact on people?
That's a really important point. Imagine you're diagnosed with a serious illness and you put your trust in medication that you believe will make you better, only to find out it's fake and could even be harming you. That can be incredibly upsetting and make you lose faith in the healthcare system.
It's a huge betrayal of trust.
Exactly. And it can lead to anxiety, fear, even anger. People might start questioning every medication they take, wondering if it's real and if their health is truly being protected.
And it can even damage the trust between patients and healthcare providers, even the good ones.
You're right. The actions of a few bad people can make everyone in healthcare look suspicious. And regaining that trust can take a lot of time and effort.
It's a reminder that this problem goes beyond just the physical risks. It affects people's mental and emotional well-being, too.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to address this issue from every angle, from strengthening regulations and enforcement to raising awareness and giving consumers the information they need to make good choices.
And creating a system where patients can feel confident in their medications and the healthcare professionals they trust their health to.
Well said. Now, before we finish our deep dive, I want to go back to something we talked about before, choosing the right place to get your medications. This is where Alpro Pharmacy really stands out as a trustworthy and reliable option in a world that can feel pretty uncertain.
Absolutely. Their commitment to sourcing genuine meds, their strict quality control, and their dedication to patient safety really set them apart.
And their 1 million ringgit guarantee really shows how much they believe in the authenticity of their products. It's a bold statement that gives their customers peace of mind.
So for our listeners who might be feeling overwhelmed with all the information we've covered today, I think the main takeaway is this. When it comes to your health, don't compromise. Choose a pharmacy that puts your well-being first, goes above and beyond to make sure your meds are safe, and gives you the knowledge you need to make good decisions.
Right. Do your research, ask questions, and choose a pharmacy that truly cares about your safety and well-being. And if you're looking for a pharmacy that does all of that, Alpro Pharmacy is an excellent option.
Now, before we say goodbye, I want to leave you with something to think about. If medications could talk, what stories would they tell about their journey from the factory to your medicine cabinet? Would they whisper about careful handling and strict quality control? Or would they share scary stories about risky shortcuts and deceptive practices?
That's a really interesting thought. It makes you realize the complex journey medications go through before they reach us. And it highlights how important it is to choose a pharmacy you trust to handle those meds with care and responsibility.
So next time you take your medication, think about the story behind it and make a smart choice because your health depends on it.
Well said. Until next time, stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay healthy. You know, it's amazing when you think about it, taking medication seems so simple, but when you factor in the whole counterfeit problem, it gets pretty complicated.
Right. It definitely makes you stop and think about where you're getting your meds from.
Yeah, for sure. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to trust. You know, you need to feel confident that what you're taking is the real deal, safe and effective.
Absolutely. And that's where having a good relationship with a reputable pharmacy like Alpro can really make a difference.
No doubt about it.
You know, one thing I noticed about Alpro that I thought was really cool is how much they focus on patient education.
Yeah.
They don't just hand you your pills, they actually try to teach you about them.
That's so important. They've got a ton of resources on their website and in their stores too. They really want their customers to ask questions and understand their meds and take charge of their own health.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, hey, we're not just here to sell prescriptions. We're here to be your partner in your healthcare journey.
I like that. And that focus on education really goes hand in hand with their commitment to medication safety. They want their customers to feel comfortable and informed, not just about the meds themselves, but also about all the steps they take to make sure those meds are genuine.
So for our listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed with all this information, what's the most important thing they should take away from all of this?
Don't settle when it comes to your health. Find a pharmacy that really prioritizes your well-being, one that goes the extra mile to ensure medication safety and empowers you with knowledge.
And it sounds like Alpro Pharmacy checks all those boxes.
They really do their dedication to genuine medication. Their strict safety measures and their commitment to patient education make them a top choice.
And let's not forget that 1 million ringgit guarantee, it really shows how much they believe in the authenticity of their products.
Absolutely. It's a bold move that sets them apart and puts customers at ease.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today, from the global counterfeit medication problem to what Alpro is doing specifically to keep their customers safe.
We have. And I hope our listeners feel like they have the information they need to make smart decisions about their medications and their health.
Me too. Remember, your health is your most valuable asset. Protect it by choosing wisely, asking questions, and partnering with a pharmacy you can trust.
Absolutely. And if you're looking for a pharmacy that embodies all of that, Alpro Pharmacy is a great option.
And that's a wrap on another deep dive. Thanks for joining us. And remember, stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay healthy.